I discovered my wife is secretly paying her boyfriend to be our driver. It sounds insane, right? Like something out of a bad indie film, but that's exactly what it was, and it was real. Look, before we get into all the messy details, the lies, the gut-wrenching confusion, the sheer overwhelming betrayal, if you're finding yourself drawn into this story, if you're feeling that knot in your stomach, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell so you don't miss the rest of it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this kind of raw honesty, share it. Leave a comment too. Tell me what you think. I'm still trying to figure out what I think, so any perspective helps. My name is Mark, or it was. That's the first casualty, isn't it? Your name feels like it belongs to someone else when your whole world implodes. I lived in a pretty standard suburban house outside of Chicago. 2 stories, a decent yard with a struggling oak tree in the front, 2 cars in the garage, a sensible SUV for her, a slightly older but reliable sedan for me. We had a dog, a golden retriever named Gus, who was the only creature in the house who seemed genuinely happy all the time. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 years of what I thought was normal, good, comfortable. Sarah, my wife, she was everything, or I thought she was. She had this way of lighting up a room, this infectious laugh that could make you forget whatever stress you were carrying. She was beautiful, of course, but it wasn't just that, it was her spirit. She was ambitious, creative, always had a new project brewing. She ran a small online boutique selling handcrafted jewelry. It was doing well, growing, and I was proud of her. I was. Our life was a rhythm. Weekdays were a blur of work. I'm an accountant, thrilling stuff, I know, and school drop-offs and pickups for our daughter Lily. Lily was 9, a whirlwind of glitter glue, scraped knees, and endless questions. Evenings were dinner, homework, bath time, and then maybe an hour or 2 of quiet with Sarah before we both crashed. Weekends were soccer games, grocery runs, the occasional dinner with friends, maybe a movie. It was mundane, yes, but it was ours. It was solid. Or I believed it was solid. The first tremor, the one that barely registered, came about 6 months ago. Sarah started complaining about her back. Nothing serious, she said, just a nagging ache that made driving longer distances uncomfortable. So I'd drive her to client meetings, to networking events. It was fine. Then she said the SUV was just too hard to get in and out of with her back acting up. Okay, fine. I started taking her car more often, dropping her off, picking her up. It was a minor adjustment. I barely thought about it. Then she mentioned needing a driver for her boutique's deliveries. Her business was expanding, she said, and she couldn't keep up with shipping everything herself.
I suggested a local courier service, but she brushed it off. Said it was too expensive, too impersonal. She wanted someone she could trust, someone who understood her brand. And that's when Dave entered the picture. She introduced him one evening over dinner. He was nice, quiet, clean-cut, wore a baseball cap pulled low, even inside. He had a way of avoiding eye contact that I initially mistook for politeness, a slight shyness. He was a few years younger than Sarah, maybe late 30s. Sarah said she'd met him through a mutual friend of a friend. He was looking for part-time work, she explained, and he was a great driver. She'd hired him to do her deliveries. He'd be using his own car, a nondescript black sedan. She'd also asked him to be her personal driver, to help out with some of her longer commutes, especially when her back was bothering her. I met him a few times. He'd pull up in his car, Sarah would hop in, and he'd be gone. He'd sometimes wait outside my office to pick me up if Sarah needed me to meet her somewhere. He'd drop her off at the gym, at the grocery store, at meetings. He was efficient, always on time. He didn't say much, and honestly, I didn't have much reason to interact with him. He was just there. Sarah paid him, she said, a set hourly rate. She'd have cash in an envelope for him sometimes, or she'd write him a check. I saw her do it once. I didn't think anything of it. It was her business. She was managing it. Lily, of course, took to him immediately. Kids are like little lie detectors, aren't they? And she just loved Dave. She'd ask him about his car, about where he was going. He'd answer her questions patiently, his voice soft. He even brought her a small, intricately carved wooden bird once, a little gift. Sarah beamed when Lily showed it to us. "See, Mark?" she'd said, her eyes sparkling. "Dave's just a genuinely good person, so thoughtful." I agreed. He seemed like a decent guy, a quiet fixture in our increasingly busy lives. The first real flicker of unease, the one that lodged itself in my chest like a sliver of glass, happened about a month ago. Sarah had a big trade show in downtown Chicago. It was a whole weekend affair, and she'd asked Dave to drive her. She'd be staying overnight in a hotel. I was home with Lily. She'd promised to call. She did call, of course, multiple times, but there was something off. Her voice was strained.
She kept her answers short, and when I asked if everything was okay, she'd brush it off, say she was just tired, the show was exhausting. She'd always say Dave was waiting outside, or he was just picking up coffee, or he was in the car. Always Dave. The final straw, the moment when the ground beneath me liquefied, happened last Tuesday. Sarah had a late meeting across town. I was working late too, buried in spreadsheets. Lily was at a friend's house. I decided to surprise Sarah, pick her up and take her home.
I knew the address, a sleek office building in a newer part of the city. I got there around 8:30 p.m. Her meeting was supposed to be over at 8. I parked across the street, figuring I'd wait. I saw her car pull up about 10 minutes later. Dave was driving, as usual. Sarah got out, said something to him, and then she walked across the street, not towards me, but towards a small, dimly lit cafe a few blocks down. Strange. I waited. She was inside for about 15 minutes. I could see her silhouette through the window. She was talking to someone at the counter. Then Dave pulled up to the cafe, and she got in his car. She didn't look at my car. She didn't wave. She just got in. That's when the cold dread started to creep in. Why was she going to the cafe? Why wasn't she coming home with me? I followed them, a nervous knot tightening in my stomach. They drove for about 20 minutes, not towards our house, but towards a quieter, more residential part of the city. They pulled up to a nice-looking apartment building, not too far from where Sarah had her meeting. Dave parked. Sarah got out, and Dave got out too. They walked together towards the entrance. And that's when I saw it. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a wad of cash. She handed it to Dave. He took it, tucked it into his pocket, and then he put his arm around her, and she leaned into him. I sat there, in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The world tilted. Everything I thought I knew, every memory, every whispered I love you, every shared laugh, every sacrifice, it all felt like a cruel joke. My wife, Sarah, and Dave, my daughter's favorite person, the quiet driver, the one who brought Lily wooden birds, paying him. For what? For this. I drove home, my mind a complete blank. I walked into the house, the silence deafening. Gus padded up to me, tail wagging, oblivious. I knelt down, buried my face in his fur, and just sobbed. It wasn't a loud, dramatic crying. It was a deep, shuddering, broken sound. I felt hollowed out, betrayed, disgusted, and beneath it all, a raw, primal anger that I'd never known before. Who was Dave? And who was Sarah, the woman I'd shared my life with for 12 years? I looked at the pictures on the mantelpiece, us, smiling, Lily as a baby. It felt like looking at strangers. The next morning, Sarah came home, looking perfectly normal. She said the meeting had run late. She was exhausted. She even kissed me. And all I could think about was the cash, the embrace, the chilling understanding dawning in my gut. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Not yet. But the seed of suspicion had already taken root, growing into something monstrous and all-consuming. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it destroyed me.
The thought of that money, of him being our driver, while secretly, it was a concept so twisted, so perverse, it felt like a hallucination. But I saw it, and I knew. I just didn't know why. And that was the most terrifying part. The not knowing, the gaping void where trust used to be. The next few days were a blur of forced normalcy. I went through the motions, picking Lily up from school, making dinner, listening to Sarah talk about her day, her boutique's latest successes, her upcoming spring collection. Every word felt laced with venom, every smile a calculated performance. I watched her, searching for cracks in the facade, for any hint of the woman I thought I knew. But she was a master of deception. Her eyes, once so open and full of warmth for me, now seemed to hold a secret, a private world I was no longer privy to. The anger simmered beneath my skin, a constant low-grade fever, but it was mixed with a paralyzing confusion. Why? Why Dave? He wasn't exactly a stud. He was bland, unremarkable, forgettable. And our driver? Paying our driver to what? It was like a punchline to a joke I didn't understand, a scene from a movie where all the plot points were missing. I started digging. It began subtly. I'd forget my phone at home, then drive back to retrieve it, only to find Sarah already out, or Dave's car already gone. I'd accidentally leave my office door unlocked, hoping she'd call, hoping she'd come looking for me. Nothing. She was either busy or already with Dave. I started checking her laptop when she was asleep, digging through her emails, her browsing history. Nothing overt. No suspicious messages with Dave, no clandestine booking sites, just endless emails about fabric suppliers, marketing strategies, customer service queries. It was maddening. She was so meticulous, so careful. It made the whole situation feel even more surreal, more impossible to grasp. One evening, I decided to confront her. Not directly about Dave, but about the money. I saw her writing a check at the kitchen counter, a large amount. "Who's that for, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, friendly. She flinched just slightly and quickly covered the check with her hand. "Oh, just a vendor," she said, her voice a little too high. "For some special silk I ordered for the new line. It's a bit pricey, but it's going to be gorgeous." Her eyes darted away from mine. My stomach twisted. "Silk, right?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sounds nice. Hope it's worth it." The lie was so transparent, so easily delivered. It fueled the fire inside me. My life began to revolve around this secret investigation. I started taking late nights at work, not because I had to, but because I needed the alone time to think, to plan. I'd drive around aimlessly, my mind replaying the scene in front of the apartment building. The money, the embrace, the utter disregard for me, for our life.
I'd pull over on deserted streets, the hum of the engine the only sound, and just stare out into the darkness, feeling a profound sense of loneliness wash over me. Lily was my anchor, my reason to keep going. I'd watch her sleep at night, her small face peaceful, and a wave of guilt would wash over me. Was I jeopardizing her world? Was I turning into the kind of person I despised? Then, I remembered something. About a month ago, Sarah had been complaining about her car's GPS acting up. She'd said she took it to a specialist downtown, a small, independent shop she'd found online. I'd barely paid attention at the time, but now it sparked an idea. What if I could get a look at Dave's car? Or more specifically, what if I could get access to his phone or his car's system? It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was all I had. The next time Sarah mentioned needing Dave for an extended period, a full day of errands and deliveries across town, I saw my opportunity. I told her I had a client lunch that would run late and that I'd be heading straight back to the office afterward. She didn't seem to notice my unusual absence. She was too busy coordinating with Dave, her voice already animated, planning out his route. As soon as she left, I knew what I had to do. I got into my sedan, my heart pounding. I didn't have Dave's number, of course, but I knew his routine, or at least the parts of it Sarah let me see. He'd often pick her up from her boutique before heading out for the day. It was a small rented storefront in a slightly less than trendy strip mall. It was about a 20-minute drive from our house. I got there about 15 minutes before Sarah's usual departure time. I parked across the street, half hidden behind a large dumpster. I watched the boutique store. A few people went in and out. Then, a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. Dave's car. He got out, looking exactly as he always did. Baseball cap, unassuming clothes, that same hesitant demeanor. He didn't go inside. He stood by his car, scrolling through his phone, waiting. This was my chance. I started the engine, pulled out, and drove towards him, intending to pull up alongside and try to strike up a conversation, distract him. As I approached, Sarah's car, her own SUV, not Dave's sedan, pulled into the lot, turning into a spot directly beside Dave's. Sarah got out, a large tote bag slung over her shoulder. Dave walked towards her, a small, almost imperceptible smile on his face. They exchanged a few words, Sarah gesturing towards her tote bag. Then she reached into it and pulled out a phone. Not Dave's phone, but a sleek, newer model smartphone. She handed it to him. He took it, examined it, then reached into his own pocket and pulled out a small, slim case. He opened it, revealing a wad of cash. He handed the cash to Sarah. My blood ran cold. They were exchanging phones and cash. It was so transactional, so devoid of any human connection.
It was business. But what kind of business? I watched, frozen, as Sarah tucked the cash into her bag and Dave slipped the new phone into his jacket pocket. Then Sarah did something that sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. She reached out, her fingers brushing against Dave's cheek, a gesture that was both tender and proprietary. She said something I couldn't hear, and then she walked back towards her SUV, got in, and drove away, leaving Dave standing there, holding the new phone. I was shaking. This wasn't about sex, or at least not directly. This was something else, something colder, more calculated. Why the phone swap? Was it a burner? A secure line for their dealings? And the cash. She was paying him, again. But for what now? He had a new phone. Was that part of the deal? I couldn't follow Sarah, not yet, not without her knowing I was watching. I needed to understand Dave. I needed to get closer. I waited until Dave got into his car and pulled out of the lot, heading in the opposite direction from Sarah. I started my car and followed him, keeping a safe distance. He drove for a while, then pulled into the parking lot of a large, anonymous office building, the kind with rows and rows of identical cubicles. He parked, got out, and walked towards the entrance. This was it. This was my chance to get a look at his car, to see if there was anything I could glean. I pulled into a parking spot a few rows away, my eyes glued to his sedan. I waited. Minutes ticked by. I could see him through the tinted windows, a tiny figure moving behind a desk. I considered going in, pretending to be looking for someone, anything to get a closer look, but I didn't want to risk being seen, of triggering any alarm bells. I stayed there for nearly an hour. Dave didn't come out. Finally, with the sun starting to dip below the horizon, I decided to make my move. I got out of my car, pretending to be stretching my legs, and casually walked towards Dave's. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I acted like I was just observing the cars, maybe admiring the model. I casually leaned against his car, as if admiring its paint job. My eyes scanned the interior. The seats were clean. The dashboard looked normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Then I saw it. Tucked into the side pocket of the driver's door, just visible, was a small, leather-bound notebook. It looked like a planner or a journal. It was a long shot, but I had to try. I glanced around. No one was watching. I quickly opened the car door. It was unlocked, which was odd given the circumstances, but I didn't question it. My hands were slick with sweat. I reached into the door pocket and pulled out the notebook. It felt heavy, substantial. I flipped it open, my eyes scanning the pages. It was filled with neat, almost impersonal handwriting, dates, times, locations. But it wasn't a typical planner. There were entries like, Client number 3, $500, package delivered, 10:15 a.m.
And client number 7, $1,000. Information exchange, 2:30 p.m. And interspersed with these cryptic notes. Sarah, the usual, dinner meeting coordination. Or Mark, schedule confirmed, diversion tactics active. My breath hitched. Mark, I was in the notebook. Diversion tactics. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about Sarah and Dave. This was bigger. This was organized. I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling. There were names I didn't recognize, amounts of money that made my head spin. It looked like a logbook for some kind of illicit operation. And Sarah was involved. Deeply involved. And then I found it. A page with Sarah's name clearly written at the top. Below it, a detailed list of services rendered. Not just driving. It included things like emotional support, 24/7 availability, discreet companionship, varied locations, information gathering, target, mark, and the one that made my stomach clench and my vision blur, marital deception facilitation, ongoing. And next to each item, a dollar amount and a corresponding payment date. The dates lined up with the times Sarah had been complaining about her back or needing a driver. The amounts were significant, far more than a simple driver's fee. I slammed the notebook shut, my heart a frantic drumbeat in my chest. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Dave wasn't just Sarah's lover. He wasn't just a hired escort. He was a professional, a facilitator. He was being paid by Sarah to manage our marriage, to keep me placid, distracted while she did whatever she was doing. The money I'd seen her give him, the cash she'd pulled out of her purse, it wasn't for sex or even just for driving. It was for orchestrating her deception. It was payment for maintaining the illusion. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated manipulation, was almost incomprehensible. She was paying him to be our driver, yes,
but also to ensure I wouldn't suspect her of anything. The diversion tactics referring to me were chilling. Was he intentionally keeping me busy, keeping me away from her, ensuring I wouldn't stumble upon anything? Was her complaining about her back a ploy to get him hired so he could be closer to me, watching me, reporting on me? I shoved the notebook back into the door pocket, my hands still shaking. I got back into my car, my mind reeling. The image of Sarah's fingers brushing Dave's cheek flashed in my mind. No longer a sign of affection, but of a contract, a business arrangement, and the new phone, a tool for their operations. I had to know more. I had to see what else was in that notebook, but I couldn't risk taking it. Not now. I needed to go back. I needed to get closer. The anger, which had been simmering, now boiled over into a dangerous, reckless resolve.
I started my car and pulled out of the parking lot, my eyes fixed on Dave's sedan, which was now pulling out of its spot and heading back towards the main road. I followed him, not with the detached curiosity of an investigator, but with the predatory focus of a wounded animal. He was heading towards a different part of the city, a more commercial district. I kept my distance, my gaze locked on his taillights, the notebook's cryptic entries burning themselves into my memory. Then, as he approached a busy intersection, Dave's car suddenly swerved. It wasn't a near miss with another car. It looked like he was deliberately trying to avoid something. He slammed on his brakes, his car skidding slightly. He was stopped directly in the middle of the intersection, traffic honking furiously behind him. Panic seized me. What had happened? Was he okay? Or was this another part of their elaborate game? I edged my car forward, trying to get a better look. And then I saw it. Lying in the middle of the road, directly in front of Dave's car, was Sarah's phone, the new one she'd given him. It had clearly fallen out of his pocket as he'd braked, or perhaps it had been deliberately placed there. Dave was fumbling with his door handle, looking panicked. He was about to get out of his car. This was my chance. I couldn't let him retrieve the phone. It held answers, but more importantly, it was a direct link to Sarah, to their secret. If he got it back, they could erase whatever was on it. Without thinking, I slammed on my accelerator. I aimed my car directly at Dave's, not to hit him, but to force him to retreat. My goal was simple: get that phone. I roared forward, honking my horn incessantly. Dave froze, his eyes wide with shock, looking between my approaching car and the phone on the asphalt. He hesitated for just a second too long. My car nudged his bumper, sending a jolt through both vehicles. Dave stumbled back, his hand flying up defensively, and in that split second, I swerved, my front tire rolling directly over the phone. I heard a distinct crunch, a sickening final sound. Dave let out a strangled cry. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I kept driving, weaving through the gridlocked traffic, my tires screeching. I glanced in my rearview mirror. Dave was standing beside his wrecked car, staring at the shattered remains of the phone on the road. And then, his gaze lifted, meeting mine for a fleeting, terrifying moment. There was no more shyness, no more politeness, just pure, unadulterated rage, and a dawning realization on his face that I wasn't just Mark, the oblivious husband. I was a threat, and he knew it. I accelerated, the image of his eyes seared into my mind, the sound of the phone shattering echoing in my ears, and a new, terrifying question forming. Had I just started a war? The world outside my car became a watercolor smudge of streetlights and exhaust fumes. I drove with a frantic, desperate energy, the adrenaline a harsh stimulant that kept me wired, buzzing with a terrifying clarity. The crushed phone? Dave's face. The raw fury in his eyes. It was no longer about figuring things out, about piecing together fragments of betrayal. It was about survival, their survival, and mine. I had struck a blow, a clumsy, destructive one, but a blow nonetheless. And now the consequences were going to be swift, and they were going to be brutal. I pulled into my garage, the automatic door rumbling shut behind me, an anticlimactic seal on the chaos of the last few hours. I killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening. My hands were still shaking, but now it was a tremor born of primal fear, not investigative zeal. I sat there for a long time, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the events replaying in my mind, each frame more horrifying than the last. The notebook, the transactions,
Sarah's carefully constructed lies, Dave's calculated complicity, and me, the unwitting mark in their elaborate, sordid game. Lily. Her name was a sudden, sharp stab to my gut. She was the only thing that truly mattered, the fragile innocence I had sworn to protect. And I had just plunged headfirst into a war zone. What would happen to her? What would happen to us? The thought of Sarah's calculated gaze, of Dave's seething rage, made me feel physically ill. They wouldn't just let this go. Not after what I'd done. Not after what I knew. I walked into the house, the familiar scent of lemon polish and Sarah's perfume, the same scent that had once been a comfort, now a phantom reminder of her betrayal, filling my lungs. The lights were low, creating long, distorted shadows. Lily was asleep, her stuffed bear clutched tight, her breathing soft and even. Seeing her, so pure, so unaware, cracked something deep inside me. I knelt beside her bed, my forehead touching hers. The guilt was a physical weight, pressing down, suffocating me. Had I failed her by not seeing this sooner? Had my blind trust paved the way for this disaster? I moved into the living room, the silence amplifying the pounding in my ears. I needed to talk to Sarah. I needed to confront her, not with accusations, but with the cold, hard facts I now possessed. I walked into the master bedroom. The bed was neatly made, the pillows plumped. She wasn't there. A quick glance around confirmed it. Her clothes were gone from the closet. Her makeup bag was missing from the vanity. She was gone. And she had taken Lily. A cold dread, far more potent than any anger, washed over me. She hadn't just been meeting Dave for clandestine affairs. This was more than infidelity. This was about something else. Something that made her flee with our daughter, leaving behind an empty house and a husband whose world had just imploded. The money, the notebook, the operations. It was all starting to coalesce into a terrifying, horrifying picture. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling.
I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. I tried calling her parents, no answer. I called Lily's school. They confirmed she hadn't been picked up. A knot of pure terror tightened in my chest. This wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. This was about abduction. I sank onto the couch, the exhaustion finally crashing over me, heavy and relentless. I replayed the scene at the intersection, Dave's fury, my impulsive act. Had I been so consumed by my own pain, my own sense of violation, that I had blinded myself to the larger threat? Had Sarah been using me, not just for my marriage, but as a pawn in her own dangerous game? Was that why she had been so meticulous, so careful? To protect herself, yes, but maybe also to ensure she had an escape route, a fallback if things went south. And now, she had taken Lily, perhaps as insurance, perhaps as a shield. The hours crawled by. Dawn was a pale, sickly gray light seeping through the blinds. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. My mind was a frantic, looping carousel of worst-case scenarios. I pictured Sarah, her face hard and determined, Lily in the back seat, her innocent questions unanswered. I pictured Dave, his rage now channeled, a cold, professional predator unleashed. I had to find them. But how? I had no leads, no contacts, only a shattered marriage and a kidnapped daughter. The thought of going to the police felt like admitting complete defeat, like handing over the reins of my own life, my own family to strangers. But what choice did I have? I stood up, my legs stiff and aching. The house felt hollow, a monument to everything I had lost. I walked to Lily's room, the scent of her still lingering in the air. I picked up her favorite teddy bear, its worn fur familiar against my cheek. This was real. This was happening. I couldn't let myself break. Not yet. Not until Lily was safe. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, my phone. As I walked towards the front door, my eyes fell on a small, framed photograph on the entryway table. It was of Sarah and me, taken on our wedding day.
We were young, hopeful, our smiles wide and genuine. The woman in the picture felt like a stranger. Where had she gone? Had she ever truly existed? Or was she just another one of Sarah's many performances? I opened the door, the cool morning air hitting my face. The world outside was waking up, oblivious to the silent catastrophe that had unfolded within my home. I got into my car, the same car that had carried me through a night of discovery and destruction. The plush leather seats felt cold, alien. I started the engine, the rumble of familiar sound in the overwhelming stillness. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I had to keep moving, to keep searching. The image of Lily's trusting eyes, her innocent smile, was the only compass I had. I drove out of the quiet suburban street, the houses still dark and silent, and headed towards the open road.
The sun was beginning to rise, casting long golden rays across the landscape, a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed my life. I drove on, a hollow echo of the man I used to be, fueled by a desperate primal need to bring my daughter home. The silence in the car was no longer just the absence of sound. It was the sound of my world collapsing, of a life I knew irrevocably shattered, and the terrifying, uncertain dawn of whatever came next. I was a man adrift, with nothing but the ghost of a past and the desperate hope for a future I wasn't sure I could still reclaim. The road ahead stretched out, vast and unknown, and for the first time, the only thing I truly felt was the crushing weight of absolute solitude. This was it, the end of everything I had believed in, and the beginning of a fight for the one thing I still held dear. And as the miles dissolved beneath my tires, the only certainty was the relentless, gnawing ache in my soul.